Hello and welcome back to Language Secrets. We're talking about the patterns that form between different European languages. Talking about it because it's interesting and it's fun and it will give you something to talk about at your next dinner party.
For the time being, we're focusing mainly on the languages that came out of Latin, the Romance languages. Let's start with the word for milk. A useful word to know if you're travelling in Western Europe, particularly if you don't take your coffee black like the locals do. But our word milk is a Germanic word. It contains really no clues that are going to be any use to you if you're travelling somewhere like Italy or Spain.
The Latin word for milk is lacte. We've got words like lactate and lactose, which do relate to the idea of milk. Lacte in Latin contains a compound consonant, that CT sound, and compound consonants appear a lot in the Latin language. What's interesting about compound consonants as European languages have evolved from the Latin is that they've struggled to stay within these languages like French and Spanish, Italian and Portuguese. They've moved away from the idea of compound consonants in general. They've essentially got rid of them.
But the neat part is that all of these new languages each did their own unique thing with them, and they kept doing that particular thing again and again and again. So it's a set pattern which is well worth knowing.
In almost all the European languages, that compound consonant has changed so much so that it becomes almost unrecognisable unless you know what's going on there.
Going into Italian, the CT becomes a TT, and hey presto, lacte becomes latte. Is that about right?
Latte, yeah.
Latte. So when you actually ask for a latte in a cafe, you're not actually asking for coffee, you're actually asking for milk. So un litro di latte would be a litre of milk.
In Spanish, lacte becomes leche. The CT changes to a CH. Quite a hard CH sound like in macho or our word such.
So in Portuguese, what do they do with lacte? Well, I'm going to turn to our Siri pronunciation engine here to ask Joanna what the Portuguese do with this word for milk.
Leite.
Or Lacte. That's the Portuguese solution, and the French solution is a little bit similar. Lacte in French becomes lait, but notice that the French have gone one step further here. They haven't just got rid of the C, they've also got rid of the sound of the T as well. You can still see it written there, but the sound's gone altogether and it simply ends up being lait.
In each of these daughter languages, if you like, what we're looking at is how typically they've treated that CT compound consonant. If we look at another example of it, the Latin word for night, you've got nocte, like nocturnal. Again, it's got that CT compound consonant in it.
So what do the Italians make of that? Well, where we had latte just now we see notte. Is that about right?
Notte.
Notte, that same TT combination. And where Spanish had leche, now we see noche, as in buenas noches.
Where the Portuguese had leite, now they've got noite. Consistent there. They've done the same thing. Where the French had le, they've now got nuit. It's the same again, the same pattern there.
Let's do one more just to nail the point. Let's look at an interesting one, the Latin word facto, as in de facto or ipso facto. It means fact. It also means done, actually, the past participle. The Italian word for this, well, you could probably guess it now from what we've told you, even if you'd never seen the Italian word. They end up not with anything that's like facto, they end up with fatto. Yeah, fatto? Yeah. Again, that same double T.
The French equivalent is fait. Again, the CT becomes an IT, and in Portuguese becomes an IT as well. The Portuguese word for done being feito. Feita, is that right?
Let's ask Joanna. Joanna, how are we going to say this? And Joanna says we're going to say
Feito.
Feito.
Not bad.
The Spanish equivalent is interesting because you might expect them to go with fecho, but actually they go one little weird step away from it and they go with hecho. So the F in the Latin has become an H in the Spanish, and Spanish H's are silent. So there are two things going on at once there. The CT has become the CH, as in hecho. But what happens at the start of the word, we'll talk more about that in another conversation, that F in the Latin becoming a silent H.
What about the letter combination PT in Latin then? It's quite simple and follows a similar pattern over all of the Romance languages. It's just become a T sort of sound. Septum in Latin, meaning 7, has become siete in Spanish, set in French, and sete in Italian. Spelled differently, but sounds the same.
And in Portuguese, let's ask Joana, and she will tell us that it's sete in the Portuguese. There's something curious about the French word for 7, set, which is that they spell it with a P. Now that is an unhelpful intervention really from scholars in the 18th century or something. They knew that there had been a P in the Latin, so they thought, well, let's be clever and shove a P into the French word, which in Old French had just been spelt S-E-T. They said, let's put the P in, but the P was never pronounced, and it just sort of hung around there being useless, really. And the same kind of more or less unhelpful scholarly intervention happened with our word debt, which came from the French debt. Some clever clog somewhere knew that the Latin word had a B in it, debitum, and so that's why ever since the 18th century or something, we've had this useless B hanging around. It's just what happens from time to time.
We talked about the compound consonant ST in our very first episode, but just looking at it a bit here, taking the Latin word statum as an example, meaning state. We've been quite happy in English to say state, happy to carry that compound consonant, and actually in Italian they have been as well, the Italian word being stato. But the Spanish and the Portuguese have been less happy to take that compound consonant. They actually have taken it, but they've added a reinforcing syllable, an E at the start, and it's become estado.
The French goes farthest of all here in making it into état, so they've got that same helper E sound on the front, but they've taken away the S, chucked that away, and they've got état, their word for state.
Okay, that's probably enough focus on these compound consonants for now. We can probably end the video there, but do you want to give us one of your very amazing facts to end the video on?
A factoid, a tidbit.
Factoid, yeah.
A language tidbit. Yes, and for this I am indebted to David Brodsky, who wrote this excellent book, and this is to do with a correlation between Spanish and French. The Spanish word hay, meaning there is or there are, just 3 little letters, H-A-Y, hay. Turns out that odd little word used to be 2 words. It used to be a phrase, in other words, a-e, and e being an old Spanish adverb meaning there. What it meant was it has, e. So it has there.
See where you're going with it.
Has there, has is whatever. But the interesting bit is that there are other languages that have this same combination. It has there. French is being the obvious one. Il y a. It there has.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what the Spanish are doing when they say I. I was really pleased to...
He's written about it in that book.
He certainly has. Very good book by the University of Texas Press.
Hope you've enjoyed it and maybe learnt something. There'll be notes again in the description below, spelling and such. If you've enjoyed it, give it a like, share it with someone else. In future episodes, we're likely to move more into Germanic language if we feel like it, so stick around for some of that.
Or if we get enough positive feedback anyway. We may only get negative feedback, people correcting our pronunciation of Latin.
Yeah, feel free to correct our Latin pronunciation, which
or anything else
isn't the best.
We're interested to know what you think, so don't hesitate to let us know, and for the time being, thanks for watching.